Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that is just as heartbreaking as it is completely baffling. We're looking at the chilling 6-month-old unsolved murder of 16-year-old Mariah Kletz. By piecing together recently leaked documents, official police records, and some seriously conflicting family testimonies, we're going to map out exactly what we do know and what is still being fiercely hidden in this investigation. Let's get right into it.
What do you mean Mariah died, and they don't want you to know? That is the exact harrowing phone call that shattered a family on February 7th, 2026. This was the moment Mariah's maternal family found out she had passed away, and honestly, it instantly opened up a mystery that remains heavily guarded by police even today. The sheer confusion and total secrecy surrounding that initial communication really sets the stage for everything that follows.
And you know, that secrecy, it's only hardened over time. For 6 entire months, investigators have maintained an absolute wall of silence. They've denied Freedom of Information Act requests from journalists, citing the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. They've refused to name a suspect. And, probably most baffling to the family, 0 arrests have been made.
So let's unpack this tragic, shrouded mystery.
We really have to start by establishing the timeline of the morning Mariah died, because the initial response is where things get strange. The chaos in Bloomington unfolds like this. At 10:46 a.m., a 911 call is placed. First responders arrive and start life-saving efforts. But pay close attention to this next part. At 11:32 a.m., Mariah's maternal family gets to the trailer, but they're immediately turned away by police pouring out the door, who tell them it's an active crime scene. And by the time the family got there, literally none of the people who actually lived in the trailer were still on the scene. Just 8 minutes later, at 11:40 a.m., Mariah is officially pronounced dead.
Which brings us to the evidence and the autopsy.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how newly released official documents completely flipped the script on what happened inside that trailer. For months, you had all these rumors swirling, right? But the hard evidence tells a very specific and frankly terrifying story. While the police were completely silent to the public, they were definitely making moves behind the scenes. The very next day, February 8th, a search warrant was left on the father's refrigerator, and it gave the family a massive clue, way before any official announcement. Detectives were explicitly looking for, quote, clothing items capable of inflicting blunt force trauma, along with electronic devices and items with blood-like substances. That was our very first real indication of extreme physical violence.
And speaking of those rumors, early on there was a lot of talk, some of it allegedly coming from the people inside the trailer, that Mariah had died of a hard drug overdose, maybe from a fentanyl-laced vape. But when the toxicology report came out, it completely debunked that theory. The only things in her system were amphetamine, sertraline, and fluoxetine. Those are just her legally prescribed medications for ADHD, depression, and anxiety. There were absolutely no illicit hard drugs found. None.
So the absolute game changer here is the August 6th autopsy drop, which came out just shy of the 6-month mark. It officially ruled her manner of death a homicide. And the specific cause? Multiple blunt injuries to the head and neck. But perhaps the most horrifying detail is the time frame noted by the coroner. The time from the onset of her injuries to her death was merely minutes.
The immediate medical cause of death was listed as a subdural hematoma. If you're not familiar, that's basically when blood pools between the outer covering of the brain and the brain's surface. It's almost always caused by a severe head injury. To put that into perspective, it really highlights the sheer brutality of an attack that took a 16-year-old girl's life in just a matter of minutes.
Now we need to talk about the conflicting family narratives.
With the objective medical facts on the table, we've got to look at the deeply divided family dynamics here. Because depending on who you ask, the story of how those blunt force injuries happened changes entirely. The maternal family points out this really chilling inconsistency. Mariah's father, Michael, allegedly told them early on that he found her with, quote, no marks on her. But later, when the maternal family viewed her body at the funeral home, they reported seeing over 22 severe injuries. We're talking gashes on her face, black eyes, and a visibly disfigured skull. That massive gaping difference between the father's alleged initial story and the harsh physical reality has obviously fueled some incredibly deep suspicions.
So, we are left with 2 completely fractured narratives. On one side, you have the father, Michael. He believes Mariah went out to a party and was attacked by an obsessed female friend. He even claims to have recordings of kids talking about it. But then, on the flip side, the maternal family points their suspicions straight inward. They're quick to note that there were only 4 people living in that trailer: Mariah, her 3-year-old sister, Michael, and his girlfriend, Caitlin. The maternal side claims the stories coming from the trailer just kept changing, and they firmly believe the police told them, quote, you know who did it.
Now, it is absolutely vital to mention here that Michael vehemently claims his innocence, insists he's a great father, and he has not been charged or named as a suspect in this case. With that said, his past criminal record does include charges like domestic battery, burglary, and resisting a peace officer. He states he completely turned his life around after a previous stint in Crescent, but experts will tell you for sure that detectives are going to heavily scrutinize that kind of background while mapping out the timeline and interviewing the occupants of the home.
And that leads us to the search for justice.
This brings us right to the final piece of the puzzle. Think about it. If the police have the autopsy, the toxicology, the search warrants, and they know for a fact this was a brutally violent homicide, why are they still stonewalling the family and the public half a year later? Well, as retired Chicago homicide detective commander Will Speller explains, 6 months of total silence usually points to one of two extreme scenarios. Scenario A, the police have zero evidence and the trail is entirely cold. Or Scenario B, they have a prime suspect and they are quietly, meticulously building a watertight case, refusing to release a single detail that might tip off the killer.
Spaler also points out that in severe blunt force trauma cases like this one, investigators rely heavily on what's called transfer evidence. I mean, when someone is beaten to death, there's an immense amount of physical contact. Detectives are going to look for the attacker's DNA right under the victim's fingernails, or any kind of trace evidence swapped during a violent struggle. And here's the thing, testing for that kind of advanced transfer evidence, it can take months, so that might be exactly what the police are waiting on before they make their move.
6 months later, a teenage girl's life has been cut incredibly short. A family is completely fractured by suspicion, and the police? They just remain silent. We finally have the definitive medical truth of how she died, but we are left with one haunting question. Who is responsible for the murder of Mariah Kletz, and how much longer is it going to take for the evidence to finally catch up to them? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.